I'd like to be able to convey to you what that experience is like, but I can't. I won't be able to talk about that.
He is one of the most infamous names in American criminal history, a charming facade masking unimaginable violence. In the early 1980s, as America obsessed over a case that changed how the nation thinks about predators, a baby girl entered the world, Rose Bundy. Her mother, Carole Ann Boone, had met Ted years earlier while working at Washington State's Department of Emergency Services, and by the time their child arrived, he was confined to Florida's death row. The facts are stark enough. The rumors about how a condemned man became a father are louder still. But behind the headlines is a child who never chose her last name, a daughter who inherited a story the public thinks it owns. This episode asks a simple, human question with a complicated answer. What becomes of a life born in the shadow of a monster? Tonight, we trace what's on the record, acknowledge what isn't, and keep our focus where it belongs. On the quiet, guarded path of the woman once known as Rose. Ted Bundy's name has long been etched into American history, not for greatness, but for terror. Yet behind the infamous headlines, there existed a small and unusual family story. Bundy married Carole Ann Boone during his trial in Florida in 1980, in what many called one of the strangest courtroom episodes in legal history. Against all odds, while living on death row, Bundy and Boone conceived a daughter. That daughter was Rose Bundy, born in October 1982, under circumstances that baffled the public and fascinated the press. Rose was Bundy's only biological child. She entered life just 2 years after her father had been sentenced to die for his crimes. From her earliest days, she lived in two colliding worlds. On the one hand, she was a beloved baby held by her mother and photographed in moments of ordinary tenderness. On the other, she was the daughter of a man whom America had branded a monster. Boone, fiercely loyal at first, often brought Rose into the prison visiting room, trying to create something resembling family life in a place built for punishment. But the reality was inescapable. Every lullaby sung and every photograph taken happened under fluorescent prison lights, with guards watching from the corners. The young mother did her best to shield her baby girl from the ugliness of Bundy's notoriety. For a while, she managed. Still, the contrast was haunting. While the world outside devoured the details of Bundy's murders and trials, a little girl was learning to walk, speak, and draw pictures of her father in a prison uniform. Rose Bundy's very existence is one of the strangest footnotes in American crime history. She was not responsible for her father's actions, yet her entire life has been shaped by them. To understand Rose, we must trace her story not just as the daughter of Ted Bundy, but as a child who grew up carrying the heaviest surname imaginable. On October 24th, 1982, in the midst of America's obsession with the ongoing Bundy trials, Carole Ann Boone gave birth to a baby girl. Newspapers reported the birth with astonishment. How could a man locked on Florida's death row father a child? Rules forbade conjugal visits, yet somehow Carole became pregnant. Whispers of bribed guards and secret moments circulated in tabloids, though the truth was never confirmed. Carole herself snapped at reporters, insisting it was nobody's business. What is certain is that Rose was born into a storm. Just 2 years earlier, her father had been sentenced to death for the murders of young women. His name had already become synonymous with evil, yet here was an innocent child, wrapped in blankets, thrust into the public eye before she could even open her eyes to the world. For Ted Bundy, the news was both surreal and comforting. In prison, he was stripped of freedom, reputation, and eventually hope. But through Rose, he had something that resembled humanity. For Carole, the baby was a living symbol of loyalty to the man she loved, a bond she refused to believe was tainted. In the earliest years of her life, Rose straddled two realities. Inside the prison, she was simply a little girl, playing in visiting rooms, giggling on her mother's lap. Carole brought her frequently to see her father, trying to create snapshots of family life. Photographs exist of Ted cradling his daughter, smiling as though he were just another young father. One anecdote recounts Rose sending her father a drawing with the words, "I love you, Daddy." For Rose, those moments defined what father meant. She could not grasp the televised trials, the gruesome testimonies, or the fact that her father's name was cursed across America. In her eyes, he was the man who kissed her forehead and called her his little princess. But outside the prison walls, the other reality loomed. The Bundy surname was a scarlet letter. America was transfixed by the handsome, articulate killer whose charm had fooled so many. Courtrooms were packed, women wrote him love letters, and television replayed every sinister smile. For ordinary children, a last name is just an identifier. For Rose, it was a burden that carried whispers, judgment, and danger. Carole Ann Boone was fiercely loyal in those early years. She had uprooted her life, moved across the country, and stood by Bundy during his trials when almost everyone else had abandoned him. Friends described her as unwavering, insisting Ted was innocent, even as evidence stacked higher and higher. Raising Rose, she attempted to keep normalcy intact, birthday cakes, lullabies, and bedtime stories, while living in the shadow of prison walls. It is impossible not to imagine the strain. Diapers changed while guards watched, crayons and coloring books brought into a room designed for punishment. Carole balancing juice boxes with emotional turmoil, hoping to shield her daughter from the horrors swirling just outside. For a brief moment, she succeeded. Rose toddled about like any other child, but that fragile peace would not last. By the mid-1980s, cracks appeared in Carole's unwavering loyalty. As Bundy's appeals dwindled and his execution loomed closer, desperation changed him. In a phone call, he indirectly confessed his guilt, admitting he might reveal the locations of his victims' bodies in exchange for delaying death. For Carole, it was the shattering of an illusion. She had loved him, defended him, even borne his child under the belief that he was innocent. In that moment, she realized she had been wrong. The betrayal was devastating. According to accounts, she cut off all contact immediately. Bundy begged to speak to little Rose one last time, but Carole refused. There was no goodbye. In 1986, she packed up her life, took Rose and her son James, and vanished. She divorced Bundy while he waited for execution. From that day forward, she never looked back. On January 24, 1989, Ted Bundy was executed in the electric chair. Crowds gathered outside the prison, cheering as the switch was pulled, but miles away, hidden from the media frenzy, 6-year-old Rose was already gone. She and her mother had disappeared into anonymity. Reports suggest they relocated to Washington State, where Carole had family ties. Likely, she changed their names to escape recognition. The Bundy surname was now infamous, and to protect her daughter, Carole erased it from their daily lives. From that point on, Rose Bundy essentially vanished. There were no interviews, no photographs, no public sightings. Decades passed in silence. What happened to Rose afterward remains one of the enduring mysteries in true crime lore. Some speculate she changed her name entirely. Rumors suggested Abigail Griffin or other aliases, but nothing has ever been proven. Others believe she may have married, taken her spouse's surname, and blended into ordinary suburbia. The truth is, only a handful of people know where she went, and those who do have chosen to remain silent. Even Anne Rule, the respected true crime author who once corresponded with Bundy, refused to disclose details. Out of respect, she simply said Rose had grown into a kind and intelligent woman. This silence speaks volumes. It is perhaps the only protection Rose ever truly had, the gift of anonymity. Psychologists often discuss the impact of parental legacy on children. For Rose Bundy, the weight is unimaginable. Imagine discovering as a teenager that the man you once called Daddy was one of the most infamous serial killers in history. Imagine grappling with questions. Does evil run in blood? Will society ever see me for who I am, not who he was? Rose never asked for her surname. She never asked for the spotlight. Yet, from the moment of her birth, she was tethered to a legacy of horror. It is a burden she has carried silently, by choosing not to carry it at all. By disappearing, by living under another name, she has reclaimed her identity. Carole Ann Boone passed away in 2018 at the age of 70 in Washington State. By then, Rose would have been in her mid-30s. If she is still living there, she may now be a mother herself, raising children far removed from the darkness of their grandfather. Speculation continues. True crime enthusiasts scour records, hunting for traces of her. Yet each attempt ends the same way, in mystery. Rose has remained invisible, a choice that must be respected. Today she would be in her early 40s. She may have a career, a family, perhaps even children of her own. If so, they are blessed with a secret that their grandfather's name, Ted Bundy, will never define them. Rose Bundy's life is not a tale of violence, notoriety, or scandal. It is a story of survival. She survived being born into a nightmare. She survived the crushing weight of a name she never chose. She survived the endless curiosity of the public, and she continues to survive by living quietly, away from the spotlight. In that sense, her story is one of triumph. Unlike so many others connected to Bundy's legacy, Rose managed to break free. Her anonymity is her freedom. The story of Rose Bundy is unlike any other in the universe of celebrity children. Most offspring of famous figures struggle with the glare of the spotlight. Too much attention, too many expectations, constant comparisons to their parents. But Rose's inheritance was something far darker. Her father's name is shorthand for terror, his face etched into America's nightmares. From the moment she was born, her life was consumed by a legacy she never asked for. And yet, the remarkable part of Rose's journey is not the shadow she was born into, but the light she carved for herself. Against all odds, she escaped the machinery of publicity. Her mother's decision to vanish, to erase the Bundy name, was an act of both desperation and love. It gave Rose the only gift she could not give herself: anonymity. For decades now, Rose has chosen silence. She has chosen privacy. She has chosen to live as a person, not as a headline. That choice is powerful. In a culture obsessed with true crime, with endless documentaries, podcasts, and YouTube videos dissecting every detail of Bundy's crimes, Rose has insisted on living outside the frame. She reminds us that behind every monstrous figure, there are innocent lives left to pick up the pieces. Perhaps she is a mother now. Perhaps she has children who know nothing of their grandfather's name. Perhaps she wakes up each morning grateful that the world does not recognize her face. Whatever the details, her survival is the takeaway. Rose Bundy did not choose her father. She did not choose the horror that stained her last name. What she chose instead was life. Quiet, guarded, private life. And that, in the end, may be the most extraordinary legacy of all.